And welcome. We are live. And today we briefly discuss President Trump's State of the Union rocks the Democrats. What I'm going to do is show a small excerpt from Fox News so you can see the confusion of the Democratic Party. And you can see that their only tactic is never to engage in intelligent dialogue or debate. It's always, with the Democrats, it's always disruptive nonsense, juvenile behavior and protests. And it just shows that the Democratic Party is a fascist party. So it is a socialist party, and it believes in dictatorship and absolute control as well as censorship. And if you do not agree with the Democratic way of the world and how they see things, then there's no room for you in this world. And that is how the Democrats engage, by declaring that there's only one way to see the world, and it's whatever they dictate at that moment. And it changes from time to time. The Democratic Party has established itself as a dictatorship party, a censorship party, a fascist Nazi party, and their number one weapon is name calling and deflection and playing the blame game and blaming others for things that they are conspiring to do, they're guilty of doing in the past, and they may be planning to do in the future. So that now we have a better understanding. And let's look at the disruption from the State of the Union by this one Democratic congressperson. And it just is absolutely sickening. So let's go to it.
Democrat protest erupted in the chamber.
Chair now directs the Sergeant at Arms to restore order. Remove this gentleman from the chamber.
Democratic Congressman Al Green from Houston refused multiple warnings to sit down and stop interrupting just minutes into the speech. It was one of several visible signs of dissent from Democrats. Fox 4's Casey Stegall in studio now with the moments and key comments also from the president. Casey.
Yeah, Steve, Heather, President Trump spoke for about 1 hour and 40 minutes in the House chamber tonight. It felt like a State of the Union address, but it technically was not called that since the president has not been in office for a full year. The last time he addressed joint sessions of Congress in this way was 2020 during his first term, when Nancy Pelosi famously ripped up his speech behind him after it was all over. Now tonight, President Trump spent a fair amount of time doing victory laps, and as expected, he placed blame for many of the issues that Americans are facing at the feet of his predecessor, Joe Biden. From the price of eggs to crime in U.S. cities, the president touted his nearly 100 executive orders and more than 400 executive actions, as well as being the catalyst for what he called restoring common sense, safety, optimism, and wealth to the country. He spent less time addressing measures passed through Congress that, while might be more difficult, they're more likely to last beyond his administration.
6 weeks ago, I stood beneath the dome of this Capitol and proclaimed the dawn of the golden age of America. From that moment on, it has been nothing but swift and unrelenting action to usher in the greatest and most successful era in the history of our country.
The president also spoke a great deal on the rising cost of living for Americans, inflation. Mr. Trump insisted that he's combating that with cuts to the federal workforce, laying off thousands of those probationary federal employees. Many of those actions, as we know, have faced legal challenges, and the Trump administration has acknowledged there has been some collateral damages, mistakenly having a negative impact on critical programs. The president lauded the work of Elon Musk, the newly appointed head of DOE, or the Department of Government Efficiency, while also warning of unelected bureaucrats. Mr. Trump went through a very long list of waste that he says has been uncovered by DOGE, including several claims that lacked context. Even some of his own officials have contradicted.
We're going to find out where that money's going, and it's not going to be pretty. By slashing all of the fraud, waste, and theft we can find, We will defeat inflation, bring down mortgage rates, lower car payments and grocery prices, protect our seniors, and put more money in the pockets of American families.
The president spoke a lot about foreign trade from the podium tonight after he enacted new tariffs just today on the nation's top 3 trade partners, Mexico, Canada, and China. A 25% tariff was placed on goods coming into the United States from Canada and Mexico. He doubled the tariff on some imported products from China from 10% to 20%. Now, Canada and China have already enacted retaliatory tariffs on the U.S., with Mexico saying it plans to do the same as early as Sunday. President Trump did acknowledge, however, that tariffs may cause a few bumps in the road out of the gate.
Tariffs are about making America rich again and making America great again, and it's happening, and it will happen rather quickly. There'll be a little disturbance, but we're okay with that. It won't be much. No, you're not. Oh.
Tonight, President Trump also announced that the FBI, DOJ, and the CIA have extradited one of the terrorists responsible for the murder of the 13 American soldiers at Abbey Gate during the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. Of course, immigration and border was another big talking point this evening. And coming up in the next hour, we'll show you what the president had to say about that and why a woman from Houston was in the audience.
Hey. Want to know how I got this $50,000 check for an accident I was involved in over 5 months ago? Look.
Okay, so there were just a few of the highlights from the president's State of the Union. And technically, it's not a State of the Union because, as it was stated by the Fox News anchor, a president must be in office for at least 12 months before they can deliver an official State of the Union address. But Donald Trump was just merely taking up where he had left off and addressing Congress, and specifically the Democrats who are fighting him in his policies and executive orders, to shine in their face the need for the country to go forward and make America great again. What we like, even Democratic voters should understand that their elected officials have now turned into the Republican elected officials of the late 80s and early 90s during the Newt Gingrich era, where the Republican Party would campaign on promises and certain topics, and once elected and put into office, they did the exact opposite. And it led to the demise of the Republican Party, which allowed Clinton to have 2 terms, and is the reason why most voters did not want George W. Bush to serve any term. And that is also contributes to why both of his terms were controversial. And then immediately they came in and put in, which actually created the platform for Barack Obama to be nominated in 2008. And then Barack Obama went on this DEI pledge. Soon as he went in, one of his main executive orders was DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion for the transgender and gay community. And he neglected the rest of the United States. And as a result, the American economy suffered for that. And then President Trump came in and, infused some business savvy and boosted the economy, and everybody loved it. But the Democrats, as we can see now, they were intent on going to war with Russia through a proxy war. And Barack Obama had set up everything to go to war with, to go into a proxy indirect war with Russia by funding the Ukraine, replacing the previous Ukrainian president prior to Zelensky, and doing that with the CIA, then installing Zelensky. And then Joe Biden, as vice president, was able to set up deals with Burisma, his brother, his son, Hunter Biden. And that is the reason why they impeached Donald Trump, is because Barack Obama and the Democrats had decided that they would enter into a proxy war with Russia indirectly by funding the Ukraine and inviting them into NATO after the fall of the Soviet Union. The agreement between Mikhail Gorbachev and Ronald Reagan is that the United States would not invite any of the former Soviet Union countries into NATO, and the United States immediately violated that by inviting Hungary and Poland into NATO immediately. And so let's see if Belarus, I don't believe Belarus is a part. Okay, and NATO, in NATO, let's see, in NATO. Okay, and so Belarus is a member of the CSTO, which is the Collective Security Treaty Organization under the auspices of Russia. So that is what this war is all about. Is Belarus is a buffer for Russia to the rest of Eastern Europe and Western Europe. And so is the Ukraine. So by Barack Obama placing NATO troops on the Poland-Ukrainian border, that was an act of aggression and hostility. And that would be the equivalent of Russia going back to placing weapons in Cuba, or better yet, Russia taking over the Panama Canal. And that is what China has done. And that is the reason why President Trump has complained about it. But Canada would be a buffer, let's say, if Russia or China controlled Greenland. But if Russia invited Canada into the collective, security treaty organization controlled by Russia, and Russia put the collective CSTO, he put troops on the Canadian if Russia joined with Canada and had Canada be a part of the Collective Security Treaty Organization and put troops on the Canadian United States border, let's say around New York, that would be an act of aggression, the equivalent of what Barack Obama did by putting troops on the Poland-Ukrainian border and inviting Ukraine into NATO. And that is how this war started, and which has us today. And because of that, Trump has spent his first 5 to 6 weeks focusing on establishing peace between Russia and the Ukraine. And he hasn't really been able to get to having his cabinet address the economy. And now Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick finally has hinted this week at some topics that are being discussed to boost the economy. We'll still have to wait until next week before we hear that. So right now, there's not a lot of information to report on the financial markets because the financial markets are in a lull. And let's go into it. Bitcoin is actually up $2,684 to the price of $89,960. Ethereum is most likely up, but not much. Ethereum is up $59 to the price of $2,230. The S&P should definitely be up. And the S&P 500 is up $67. The price of $5,856. And last, the Dow Jones is going to have, $496 to the price of $43,017. So the market sentiment is improving a little bit, but the market is going to continue to zigzag for the month of March as Trump gets, now that he's getting closer to some treaty of peace between Ukraine and Russia, he can now focus on. And regardless, the reason why Trump is focused on peace so much is because he needs to halt any additional funding to Ukraine. And that way he can divert that money towards whichever economic plan that he's going to work out with Scott Bessent, the Secretary of Treasury, and Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick. So he can't really sit down and do that until he can find some money. And he also has to pass a budget. And he knows that passing a budget is very far away. So the easiest thing for President Trump to do right now is to work at first, have Doge go in and find a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse, then redirect that money towards his economic plan. He already has his team working on the economic plan, but he needs money for stimulus, and he's going to find it through cuts. He's already found $59 billion through US AID. He's also finding other additional money through the Social Security Insurance Administration. And then through the Department of Education, he's also going to find, of course, some fraud, waste, and abuse. And once he deals with that, still going to take the month of March to get through that. The best that Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick is going to be able to do during the month of March is release tidbits, hints of what they plan to do. They already have their economic plan in order. They just need money to stimulate it and fund it. And right now, they know Trump understands that getting a budget passed may take a year. So the easiest thing to do is to have Doge go in, identify fraud, waste, and abuse, find all of this extra money, first through USAID, $59 billion. Then he can redirect that money towards his economic stimulus plan, and then he can begin planning for crypto. So it's going to be the second or third week in April before we hear anything big and significant for crypto to have the markets move. So unlike the first 6 months of President Trump's administration, the first time around, there's not going to be a lot of information to release on stimulating the economy, because what the Biden administration did is made sure they allocated all of this fraudulent waste money and sent it out. So they'll be able to go back and reclaim the $2 billion that was sent out to a nonprofit under Stacey Abrams. They'll be able to go out and grab additional money, but it's still going to take a few months. And the month of March should allow him to get through at least 60 to 70% of the current court cases so he can claim back the frozen money. Up until right now, he's still not releasing that money, even though a court judge has threatened him. He's going to hold on to that money until he gets his case heard. So with that, we're going to sign out right now. Today is Wednesday. We're not going to get a lot of economic news. I think the biggest economic news that we're going to continue to get is Doge finding more and more fraud, waste, and abuse, and how they'll redirect that. So with that, this is the Crypto Kid signing out. We'll keep you posted on any economic or financial events, anything. But I'm telling you now, the best thing we have is we're getting closer to Ukraine and Russia establishing peace. I don't believe Zelensky is going to not only be in office by this July 2025, but I believe they're going to replace Zelensky with somebody else. I'm sure Trump right now is trying to figure out who in Ukraine would be a good person to lead the country, because it's clear that Zelensky wants more money and really has no intentions of establishing peace. And so because of that, Zelensky is not a good person to have in office right now. He's not going to get any money. He wants to cry about spilled milk. Russia is not giving up its gains in Crimea. And like I said before, the most equitable distribution of land in Ukraine to establish peace is at Kiev. I believe that Russia is going to continue to demand that at least Kiev, which has a lot of rich and precious resources, be given back to them, and that'll be a large enough buffer. But Crimea is not a large enough buffer. I believe they're going to divide the Ukraine in half at the border of Kiev, and that will satisfy Russia because of the lives that they lost, as well as the money and resources they lost. It will allow the United States to strike a deal with Russia where Russia will agree to give the United States favorable pricing as a result of allowing the Ukraine to be divided at Kiev. The Russians are not giving, and there's nothing the United States can do to force Russia to give up that land. They've earned it through money and lives. And this is something the Democrats dimly played their hand. This was not wise. A lot of lives were needlessly lost. But it just shows that even the Democrats, but it's not the Democrats alone. There are a lot of Republicans in Congress that have made a lot of money and profit through the proxy war between the Ukraine and Russia. So that's what it's really all about. It's more than just money laundering. It's an opportunity for the Democrats to make a lot of wealth, but not only the Democrats in Congress, but also members that are Republican as well. It's sad, but that's where the United States is. And that's why we need to make America great again, because we've soiled our clothing. We no longer are an authority on integrity and morality. And I don't believe we'll ever be able to regain that posture and appearance we once had. So with that, this is Daniel Plummer signing out. I wish you all the best. I love you all. Thank you. Please drop comments in there. Even the trolls that keep dropping the same comment, the same thing over and over. Thank you, trolls, for dropping those needless, thankless comments every day. Your AI is the worst AI out there. Your bots are the dumbest bots that actually exist on the internet. So keep it coming. Keep sending it. It's laughable. It's just humorous. And it shows that your technology is poor, horrible, and terrible and in the latrine, and you're not even worthy of acknowledging. So with that, I'm out of here like last year. ABC.